step 3, the gearbox, you can see that we're going to put in all of the gears that we built in the last step and put them inside the gearbox. And you can see that here's one side of the gearbox, and then this is the other side, which is a cover that's going to end up fitting over top of this. So I've pulled together all the screws and everything we need, but there's one interesting step here. It says apply synthetic rubber cement to the places shown in this mark. Now I've looked at forums and I've looked everywhere for this, and technically Tamiya doesn't really create a synthetic rubber cement specifically for RC, and they don't really have anything like this specifically anyway. So what the whole point is, you need something that will hold these nuts in place, so that later on when we need to screw this gearbox to the chassis, the little nuts are going to stay inside those holes. So they're basically saying use some synthetic rubber cement to be able to hold those in place temporarily, so that at the point we're going to be screwing them in, those nuts haven't fallen out and are, they've disappeared. So I'm actually just going to use the Elmer's rubber cement, which I've used for ever basically, but I don't see any problems with doing that because the whole idea is just to have those nuts held in place temporarily. So that's what I would suggest for that part. So I'll set this up. We've got all of our screws and everything together, and we will put in all of the gears, and of course we're going to grease all these up in the process. So the first thing you have to do with this step is put in these nuts, and they're temporary, but I've noticed on the one side there's actually a little screw and a washer that's going to hold this in place. So if you take one of the little nuts, you can see we need to put that in here, and it says note direction because you can see in there, you can see that the corner is fitting into the corner. So once that's in, you grab the little washer and this tiny tapping screw, put that through, and we're going to put that right in that hole right there, and then use our screwdriver to screw that in. See, that's going to move because it's not, that washer isn't attached to it yet. There we go. Let's try that again, only I'm going to end up having to hold that while we screw this one in. And you can see that the washer is fitting inside that whole area. So we'll screw this in. And there we go. Now, if this is how it's supposed to be, that nut shouldn't even come out. And it doesn't. So that's how they're choosing to lock that nut in, because obviously on the back side we'll be screwing that in later, but it's being held in by this little tapping screw and the washer. And now that I know that it's not going to come out, I'm going to just tighten it a bit more, but regardless, it's in. That's not coming out. So we can move on to the other one. Now the other one is definitely saying you need to use the rubber cement, because otherwise you can see that there isn't anything to hold this in. And if we put that in all the way down there, great, it's in the right place, but I mean that's going to come out at any moment. I mean there's nothing to hold it. So we're going to need to put something in there to hold it. So I'll grab the rubber cement and we'll put some of that in there. Okay, so here we have our rubber cement. I'm going to just put a little dab in there. And we'll grab our nut, and we're just gonna slide that in. And I'm just gonna get off the excess there. But you can see on the back side it is in, and I mean that's gonna need a little time to dry, I'm sure, but it will hold it in temporarily just so that it doesn't pop out. So that part is done, which basically means that, and you can see that they're showing you that way because ultimately we have to turn this around to now be able to close up the gearbox. So now we'll put these gears in, grease them up, and then we can put this together. So I think what we'll do is let's get the bigger gear set, the gear shaft B, into place. And you can see that that bearing is just going to sit right inside of there. Now, obviously this all has to be greased up. So while we've got an open hole here without any gears on it, let's do that. So we'll grease up these gears. And we'll do the same here. Make sure we've got enough. I mean, I like being liberal, but not too liberal with the grease. Just get it on as much things as possible. Much of the teeth. Okay, so that would be one of them. Now we've got this one here, which again, now we're going to put that bearing all the way down to the bottom, which is going to fit on the inside. And now that's down. You can see that the teeth are meshing. So again, I mean, if I turn this, all that grease is getting onto that other gear. So that's great. And then we've got our other one, which you can see the way this needed to go. Whoops, we got the pins come out there. Let's put the pin back. Make sure that slides across. Now, I just want to make sure that that is going in correctly. So yes, that's on that side. So it needs to fit in this way. So knowing that, we're going to slip this through. Make sure the bearing sits correctly. Aha. Okay. So interesting fact, but this gear here is going to end up having to go into that hole first because you can see that that doesn't fit so well. So we're going to have to, I'm just going to take this out, or at least move it out of the way temporarily so I can get that one in. Then that can all go back down and I can push that, and now it's all in place correctly. So what we're left with is greasing this gear now. There we go. So we can see this all moving nice and smooth inside that gearbox. Yeah, so I'm happy with that. I think that looks good. So now what we'll do is we will grab what we've just finished here. We're basically flipping it around, and then we have to move it over, and then it will go into place over top of all of this. There we go. And it's kind of snapped into place too. So that's in the end how that's going to look. And now we've got our screws to attach this all to. And you can see the MA1, which is the bigger screw, is actually fitting down in that back corner, going into that part there. So we will screw that one in. And again, I'm not going to go all the way through. I want to make sure that everything is seated properly. Now that's the only one that was going to be different. Every other screw is going to be this smaller MA2 screw. So if we look at how this is all going to go, we know that that one and that one is going to go there. So again, let's just screw that in a little bit. Okay, then we've got this one down there. Same thing. Screw that one in a bit. And on this side, we've got two more. We've got one here. And we've got one right down there. Okay, now that nothing seems to be binding, I will go all the way, mostly. Just want to make sure that everything is seating properly. Which it is, so I'm going to now start screwing this in all the way. So there we go. There is step 3 complete. So we've got our gearbox finished. It's such a different design to anything I've seen previously with Tamiya kits. So this is kind of cool. It's building something completely different. So that's awesome. So step 3 is done. So now we're going to work on step 4, and we're going to attach the spur gear.